Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Chris Buckle's Album Club. And today, as usual, we will be doing two albums randomly picked from a list of submissions by people here. And we will, of course, give our initial impressions on them at the beginning of the video. We'll listen to the albums, and of course, then we'll get back with our thoughts on the albums, and of course, pit them head to head and say which ones we like better. Today with me, I have Ben.
There must be some way out of here, said the joker to the thief.
Matthew.
There's too much confusion. I can't get no relief.
And Fan.
Down to June 5th.
Just breaking the flow.
Even flow. No. Anyway.
That's also what I thought. I thought, even flow.
See, I was gonna do it, but I mean, with the flow, I would have been unfinished, because I would have only said, businessmen, they drink my wine, plowmen dig my earth, and then we would have just been unfinished. So I decided to continue the countdown to June 5th.
I'll get up.
I should have taken a video by Tram.
Alright, we ready to hear what today's album's all?
And how.
Alright, today's album pairing is actually going to be two very widely acclaimed albums. This is basically the complete opposite of what we did last time. So we'll be doing Yoko Ono. We will not doing Yoko Ono, actually. But we're doing two very acclaimed albums, and I feel like these will actually a little bit more even matchup in sometimes, although knowing certain biases we have just towards different types of music, it will be maybe a bit different than if you just pulled critics exactly. But these are both two very, very widely acclaimed albums. So, today's albums are Blue by Joni Mitchell and Automatic for the People by R.E.M. And we're gonna go to initial impressions and start with you, Ben.
I have heard Blue by Joni Mitchell before. It has many excellent songs on it. I'm a big fan of some of Joni Mitchell's work, though I am probably still significantly insufficiently knowledgeable. I also know some songs from Automatic for the People, though I don't think I've listened to it all the way through. There was one R.E.M. album I've listened to all the way through. I feel unsure which one it was now. It might have been this one. We will see. I do know quite a few songs on here, such as Man on the Moon, which is one of the best songs, and also Everybody Holds Right of Hand. I know both of those. But I do really like Michael Stipe and R.E.M. Shout out to Michael Stipe. The last thing I heard about you were helping people that were surviving sexual abuse by Neil Gaiman, which was unexpected but very good. So if you read the article about Neil Gaiman's behavior, Michael Stipe appears at the very end as the host of like a meetup for the people that survived it. He's like hosting their meetup at his house.
I was very baffled by that.
Well, it's good. It's good for him.
It's good, but it was also like random celebrity cameo.
It's just like Michael Stipe. I don't know. That made me feel happy about him, though. It's like, well, at least Michael Stipe, but still good. I don't want to think about the contents of that article anymore. Anyway. But yes, I am feeling rather favorable to Michael Stipe right now. I also feel favorable to Joni Mitchell, though. I listened to her quite a bit last year. Specifically like in October. Starting in October. This does not have my favorite Joni Mitchell song, Big Yellow Taxi, on it, though. But it does have many other great tracks. So I think, I'm not decided, of course, right now which one I'm picking, because we're not anywhere near this point. But I do think that I'm starting out rather favorably towards both albums.
Matthew.
I am well acquainted with Joni Mitchell's music. I've, of course, know of Blue. It's one of my favorite Joni Mitchell albums, although I'm still undecided if it's my favorite one. As for REM, I have not listened to that much REM, but I like their stuff, so I am looking forward to hearing them.
Fan.
So I have actually never heard all of Blue. I've been meaning to for a while, so this is great because a lot of my favorite musicians have said how much they love this album, and just a lot of people I know talk about how much they love it. So I am happy to finally have an excuse to just sit down and do it because I am a big fan of procrastination and just putting off stuff. So I'm really happy that I now am forced to listen to it because I have been wanting to for a while. As for R.E.M., I do not listen to R.E.M. a lot. That is because I do not really like R.E.M. very much. Of course, I haven't actually listened to R.E.M. in last time I can remember listening to them was like 2019. So it is very possible my opinion has changed. It is also very possible that it has not. But I am still excited to give it a listen.
Alright, and as for me, I'm kind of actually in the same boat as Fan on this one in terms of I've listened to several of Joni Mitchell's other albums. I own several of them. I know some of the songs from Blue, but I've just never really sat down and listened to the full one. It's not one of the ones I own on vinyl. It's it's just I don't know. I've kind of just not gotten around to it. I just never found the time exactly. So I'm very much in the same boat as Fan. I like all the stuff, and I am very familiar, especially with the song "Carry" from Blue. So that's good. I owned the previous two albums before it on vinyl, so I expect it will be pretty similar. But I am looking forward to listening to it. As for R.E.M., I generally like R.E.M. I don't think I ever listened to a whole R.E.M. album as far as I remember. It's possible. I know I haven't listened to this one, though. But I do really like the song Man on the Moon. I'm also somewhat familiar with Everybody Holds of It. Seems like I don't hear that often. The other songs, I don't really think I know. But Man on the Moon is great. It's my favorite R.E.M. song. Of the R.E.M. songs I know from them playing on the radio, I guess. It really is a quite good song. I really enjoy it. So, at the very least, I know I will like that song. As for the rest of this, I mean, we'll see. R.E.M.'s music is a bit strong. I mean, it does very much have its own sound, and Michael Stipe kind of has a very distinctive voice, and that can, I think, lead to maybe sort of a bit of a kind of split opinion on it here. But I've also heard, I know from people who do like R.E.M., because I do have friends who like R.E.M., I've heard some people say this is their best album. Of course, I've heard some people say otherwise. But I guess we'll see. I mean, I am familiar with R.E.M.'s sound, so I expect this to be kind of like that. How strong or weak it is generally by track listing, we'll just have to see, because the song I'm really most familiar with on here is Man on the Moon. And, I don't know about the other songs. Can't really evaluate it as an album as a whole yet, so. I'm looking forward, though, to listening to this one as well, so, for that reason. So, I feel like this is a more even matchup than we sometimes have. I mean, I know both of these albums are very, very well liked. They're both, of course, very different in kind of sound and time period, although obviously there are things that are far from each other than these two, but I do feel like this one will be an interesting matchup, hopefully, and should make for an interesting episode. So, now I think we should go listen to the albums, and then we'll be right back with our thoughts on them. Alright, we are back now, and we've listened to the albums, and we're here to give our thoughts on them. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't have a huge amount to say about these albums this time, but I know other people do, especially Ben. So the first album was Blue by Joni Mitchell. And as usual, we will be starting with Ben. So Ben, take it away.
Yes, I'm going to be starting with something rather abstract and referring to a rather obscure book and a rather obscure part of this book. So hang in for a moment. So in the book Reflections on Violence by Georges Sorel, which I am not going to be discussing the main content of, which is somewhat well known among political theorists. I think his title is kind of a sign about what a lot. Those important things in the middle about myth making, for instance. I don't really agree with it, but that's not really the point. But in Reflections on Violence by Georges Sorel, in this introduction, there's a passage that stood out to me, and I read this over summer 2024. So in this passage, Sorel refers to his own pessimism as a real pessimism. His pessimism is that of like a true pessimism, but most pessimists that you meet, like when you're like encountering somebody who's a self-proclaimed pessimist, the defeated optimist, right? The defeated optimist is much more common than the true pessimist. And I think that this idea of like a defeated optimist ends up ringing through this album, and especially in its first and last tracks. So let's start with All I Want, a song that I'm already quite familiar with before re-listening to this album. I listened to this album before we did before it was announced. But the song starts with this kind of almost humorous, like, all I really want is to love you. Of course, he doesn't say it in such a banal way as I just did. I want to shampoo you, right? Which I found to be a humorous lyric. But the song moves towards the unraveling, right? It's like, all I really want is to like bring out the best in you, etc. But then it's like, I hurt you and you hurt me. But then it moves on to this kind of dark or like unraveling note. I think that is melancholy. I would say it's a melancholy note instead of like a pure darkness. I think this melancholy note of like defeated optimism, this kind of defeated good intention, I think works well with the almost like sticky sweetness of like, I want to shampoo you, and of the opening verse of that song. So I thought that is a very strong song. I think it sets a good tone for the rest of the album. There's kind of two different dimensions to this album. So first is this kind of like defeated but still existing optimism, right? But it's like become bittersweet, but it's still existing. Right? We will get more into this again. The other element, which is found in songs like that I find pretty humorous. So like with the second track, My Old Man. The song seems to be about like a common law marriage, or really probably not actually that. Because old man being used in the 60s to mean that, just like your partner, right? Weird hippie lingo. My old man sounds like it sounds like, oh, well, it's like, this is just all like long-term relationship, right? We don't need a piece of paper from the city hall to stay true, etc. Now, of course, when you say old man, it sounds like he's old, but he's not. This is just happiness. But I always find it kind of funny, right? I mean, this language reappears in the song Kelly, and it's also, of course, most notably in the pivotal verse of Big Yellow Taxi, which is not on this album. It's from the 60s. A Big Yellow Taxi came to take away, she says came to take away my old man, but also I'm not whole. Kelly is also kind of a silly, hipstery, kind of sad thing. You're a mean old daddy, but I like you. Or the final line of it, you're a mean old daddy, but you're out of sight. I don't know much else to say about that other than I find that funny. But I did hold like French cologne too. I found kind of funny for some reason. Not the French pole, but the cologne pole. That has kind of a beatnik vibe to it too, doesn't it? But I think the album is stronger when it's this kind of dark sadness, right? I mean, I already discussed not dark sadness, almost like a defeated optimism. I think Little Green is another good example of this. This is the third track of the album, right? She names her daughter Little Green. I mean, not really in real life, but in a song. And this is a true story. Where she names her daughter Little Green, but there's kind of this like openness to that, right? The greenness of the trees, but also kind of naivete, right? That's what Green is saying. She also says that he, the father, was green. And I kind of like travel like hippie-ish sense and moved to California. But like there's this kind of openness to it. But of course, what does the song end with? In the third verse, as in real life, because she was very poor when she gave birth to her daughter, she gives her daughter up for adoption. Right? And even though there's this kind of openness, there's still this like openness to it. Right? I mean, the daughter's not dead. Of course not. So there's still this kind of green optimism that exists even in this defeat. Alright, and it's a deeply personal defeat. I think this idea kind of reoccurs in a song like California, right, which is about her wistfulness to return to California during a trip to Southern Europe. There's multiple elements of that. The way politics is evoked in that song, which is not really invoked that much in the rest of the album, I thought was interesting, right? It calls back to the John Lennon Yoko Ono song, Give Peace a Chance. Saying like that was something that they said and it didn't happen. We're reading the news about the war and Europe, etc. But there's still this kind of wistfulness for one, that sentiment, right? And then two, the just California in general. I did think it was kind of funny to be like, I'm going to Spain to get tanned when going back to California. When you could easily get tanned in California. The California's climate is actually pretty Mediterranean, and she's clearly traveling around the Mediterranean in the song. But I mean, I think California here almost more stands for San Francisco, right? Like the hippie San Francisco. We're going to San Francisco. Songs like that. As well as literally, right? Like, literally, she wants to go to California, but there's also this kind of like, even though the late 60s were a very dark time, it's almost like a 67 vibe of it. Like, we can stop a war for peace and love issues, wistful for, even though they'll give peace a chance is obviously from later after that, after the violence of 68. There's still that kind of hippie optimism to it that California somebody still symbolizes, right? California, even in its like new, like, oh, it's the tech world or whatever, does kind of have this hippie optimism to it. And I think that this song kind of captures a wistfulness to that, like a defeated optimism. Before we get into the last few tracks, there's a couple of the last 3 tracks, which I thought were the strongest tracks on the album. There was a couple more comments I want to make. So I thought Blue, which is the song, the title track, I don't really have much to say about it, though. I did like the idea of a foggy lullaby, though. But I don't really have much else to say about that song. And also, This Flight Tonight, I thought was a standout track. I really was, I had forgotten about, because I had heard this album before. The part where she imitates Good Vibrations on it. That was kind of fun. It does have a distinct sound from basically everything else on the album. So I thought that part was also very strong. I would like to hear Matthew's thoughts on that, though. So anyway, now time for the final 3 tracks. So Forced Revel, which starts with Jingle Bells, right? It's Joni Mitchell Christmas. I thought this was another very strong, very sad, very sad song. The idea of Christmas being associated with cutting down trees, well, true, makes sense. Does take on a different register here. I bet it's getting near Christmas, they're cutting down trees. Even though the happiness of Christmas is being contrasted with Joni Mitchell's sadness, right? She wants to get on the river and skate away, even though it's warm in California or wherever she's at, and thus the river's not frozen. And she wants to get away from it all. Even Christmas itself has this like weird double edge to it in this song, right? Yeah, they're putting up reindeer. Right? It's evoking like, oh, the rest of the world's happy. But simultaneously, and knowing the rest of Joni Mitchell's work, like cutting down trees is something that she thinks about fairly often in a very like wistful way already. Alright, so it's like they're cutting down trees. So even Christmas is double edged before we get into home mood. I did also like that on this track, unlike some songs by a certain current pop star. Joni Mitchell does seem to be genuinely genuflecting on whole report of a relationship that she caused to go wrong, and not just being like, oh well, this went wrong because the man sucks and now I'm sad. It seems more nuanced than that. And speaking of nuanced, A Case of You. Oh Canada. The wine is so bitter and so sweet, but also very low alcoholic, because you could apparently drink a whole case of it and still be on your feet. I mean, I think that is actually a pretty strong metaphor, right? But it's so intoxicating, bitter and sweet, right? Nuance. But ultimately, she could take it in and still function, right? But this love in that song is not toxic, right? It's not intoxicating her. But of course it is, right? It's intoxicating her, but also not. I found this to be one of the best and most nuanced love songs that folk music has ever produced, right? The only other competitor I can think of is Love My Zero by Bob Dylan, which is not a very similar song, but it does have this kind of similar, like, complexity to it. So I'm going to stand by that comparison, even though it is a little odd. Finally, back to this, like, serious thinking. This is the part where the "so well" quote came into my mind. Is the song "The Last Time I Saw Rachel." Even though in some ways the song is weaker than, say, "River" or "A Case of You" or "All I Want," right? Musically, I think it is. I think that this is a strong song in that it ties together the themes of this album very well. Richard and Joni Mitchell in it are both defeated optimists in some sense, even though Richard pretends he's not. He pretends to be a full, thorough pessimist. He says in the opening verse, "All romantics meet the same fate. Someday, cynical, drunk, and boring. Someday, in some dark cafe." Richard himself, Joni Mitchell says, "This applies to you too. I can see in your eyes that you're all romantic." Richard himself ends up cynical, drunk, and boring in front of his TV, a defeated optimist. But Joni Mitchell's similar defeated optimism in the last verse, drunk in a dark cafe with bottles of wine, completely drunk though, remains what she calls a dark cocoon. In this last verse, it's like in this dark cocoon of the darkness that is captured in this album. It's the darkness of sadness, of breaking up, this defeated optimism. Still within the defeated optimism, as Sowell had said, is ultimately still optimism. The pessimism is ultimately still optimist. After the defeated optimism of All I Want, continuing throughout most of the album, this idea of the pessimism, the dark cocoon, still being a cocoon, right? Of it being defeated optimism and not pure pessimism, I think is a perfect image to go out on. I thought that was really, really strong. So altogether, I think this album is great, right? So I have said many things about it, obviously, but altogether, I think every song on here is good, and it's at its best when it's capturing this defeated optimism. And I will now turn it over to Matthew.
I think this album is a masterpiece. It is rightfully praised for like how incredible this work is. I think it's my favorite Joni Mitchell's album, which is somewhat of a safe pick, but when you have an album like this, it's hard to go against it saying that it's her best work. Like, I think every song is incredible. There's no skips. It's all hits, no misses. I think River is my favorite track of the album, but there's also like really great stuff like All I Want, My Old Man, the title track, California, Kiss for You, and even the last track, last time I saw Richard. It makes sense about all the influence that Joni Mitchell has given to a lot of music artists, including one which we did for the album club, like Why Is Blood for Titanic Rising, which has a lot. Um, you can like hear the influence that Joni Mitchell had on her, and especially with a lot of women songwriters. You know, what else can I say? This is like an all-time great album, one of the best albums of all time.
Uh, this was an odd experience for me. When I first put it on, I was like extremely underwhelmed. I was just not feeling it. Like I looked it up, and apparently this was voted by as like the best album ever by a woman. Voted, I believe it was NPR who did that one. Not that NPR is like the go-to place for musical analysis, but I mean it's still a big deal. It's a reputable source, or maybe not source, but journal. Um, Track after track after track after track. I'm listening to it. It's just disjointed. Joni's voice kind of was all over the place and it wasn't working for me. I wasn't getting much out of it, which was a shame considering how iconic this album is. And I was just pretty much kind of just disappointed with it, just not vibing with it. But then track 5 started, which is Blue, and from the first note of that track, my entire demeanor shifted. It was just like one of the most heartbreaking songs I'd ever heard. And every song after that is like nearly perfect, along with that one, of course. It's heartbreak after heartbreak. You know, it's such like a gorgeous album. There's not a wasted note. Now at first I didn't really really like her singing style, but then it's like I just got it. Like as soon as that started, like the whole album just made sense to me. I'm not sure what I wasn't getting at first, but very clearly it did shift over to me. Um, I wish I had gone back. I don't know why. I didn't realize until we started recording. I'm like, oh, I should have gone back and listened to the first 4 tracks again to see how I felt now. I didn't. That's a user error. That happens again throughout the course of this show. I'm sure I will. Um, but I wish I had gone back and listened to those and maybe reevaluated, or maybe I feel the same way. I don't know. Um, the singing was just amazing, and her piano playing is excellent. I feel like the tracks with Joni on piano are better than the ones with her on guitar. She's a good guitar player. She's very competent. She knows what she's doing. But I feel like when she's at the piano, she's just so much more emotive. There's a lot more emotion. She just really can sing through a piano better than a guitar. I feel like that's really where she shined when accompanying herself with on the guitar. There's also the Appalachian Dulcimer, I believe, on this record. Believe is what it's called. Dulcimer, sorry, is on this one as well. Which same thing as the guitar. She's competent. She does a good job accompanying herself. But I feel like when she's on the piano, she really is singing through the instrument, and not as much through the guitar or Appalachian Dulcimer. Um, So in football, there's an old saying: "It's a tale of two halves." You know, you hear it often when a team makes a when a team is just completely losing down by a bunch of points, and then in the second half comes out and completely dominates and just destroys. There was the Bills versus the Oilers, the '92 wildcard game is the most famous one of that. Um, where they were like down 31 or something and then won 38-31. Or something like that. I don't know. I wasn't alive. But I do know that they came back and won. It's an iconic game. And this is the album version of that for me. It just, for whatever reason, I just didn't get it in the first half, but in the second half, this album just made complete and total sense. I mean, half, I know, I think it's 10 10 tracks and a track 5 I got. It's a little bit more than half, but still, I, um, I really had an interesting time. I'm really happy we listened to it, because I may have just, after track 4, me not liking it, I may have just been like, I don't really like this, and just turned it off. Because, like, I feel like 4 tracks in is kind of about where I'm like, okay, I think I kind of get it. But then it's like that digging for diamonds meme where the guy stops right before it, and that probably would have been me. If I'm being honest with myself, I would have stopped right before I hit the diamonds, and absolutely love this record. So I'm happy we did it. And yeah, I had a good time listening to it.
Alright. Well, as for me, I'm not sure I really had all that much to say about this, I'm going to be honest. I did like it. It sounded much like the other Joni Mitchell stuff that I've heard. I already knew some of the songs, Carrie in particular, R.E.M-Album, and California being good ones. I just, though, I don't know, I can't really say it really inspired any sort of great feelings in me. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's good. I do like this style. That was mostly it, though. It was just like, yeah, nice. Nice. I kind of knew what to expect. I had heard some horrible stuff. I like it. She's never been particularly a favorite of mine, but I do like her music. I like her singing style, Joni Mitchell's, and it's just about it. She's not exactly one of my faves, but it's a style I like, and I think she does it quite well. And so I don't really have more to say. That's just kind of it. I mean, it's sometimes I have more to say about it, sometimes I don't. I wish I did this time, but I really just don't. So, and I think that may be a recurring theme. And going on to this next album, because I'm not sure I have a huge amount to say about it overall, but of course we will get to me at the end. The next album was Automatic for the People by R.E.M., and we're going to you, Ben.
Yeah. Sadly, I don't have as much to say about this album as I did with Blue, but I do have several fun things to say about it. So, one, it is worth noting that John Paul Jones worked on this album. Yes, specifically on the songs Drive, The Side Window Sleeps Tonight, Everybody Holds It at Night Swimming, which were all singles. The song I knew best on here, I had also heard this album before, but the song I knew the best is... the song I know best on this is, of course, Man on the Moon. Actually, of the songs that we did for this week, this album club, that is the song I like the best of all of them. I like a better than any song on Blue, but that's because I'm very, 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 very familiar with it. It is, of course, a song about Andy Kaufman and conspiracy theories about him not dying. Andy Kaufman was a weird guy, so conspiracy theories about him actually not dying were not too surprising or like too out there when it happened. Now, of course, they are. He's clearly dead. But he was a very odd comedian, and that's what caused this. So yeah, I think that is a I think that's the standout track of this whole episode. Of course, the song "Everybody Holds" is also a song I'm quite familiar with. So hold on. When I heard that, it's like it's time to get out of my car, stop driving, and just walk. If you know, you know. Anyway, that's also a quite good song. It is a little bit melodramatic, but I think Michael Stipe could pull off that type of like don't kill yourself type song, which we do need sometimes, like a hold in there, hang on in there song. I think Michael Stipe is actually a good person for that. I like R.E.M. I like Michael Stipe's work. I like this album. The overall song that stood out the most to me, and I don't know why it wasn't a single, was the song "Try Not to Breathe." I thought that was a very strong song. It kind of reminded me of those songs that deal with like dying. I mean that song is not directly about that. It also kind of reminded me. Well, I'm actually not entirely sure what it is about, but it clearly is. I mean, I will read some lyrics. I will try not to breathe. I can hold my head still with my hands at my knees. These eyes are the eyes of the old chivalry. I will try not to breathe. This decision is mine. I have lived a full life. I mean, it does sound like he's dying, like he's an old man dying. I think that idea is pretty strong. I think it's well executed on here. I don't know why it wasn't a single, although that's maybe not single material, but I think in terms of quality, it is. So I think that that's a very strong song. I did find the opening track, which was also the opening single, which is like, which is Drive. Him saying things that are kind of just like weirdly dramatic catchphrases, like walk around the clock. I mean, it was kind of a string of cliches, but in a funny way. So I thought that was interesting, at least. I don't know what to say about that. But I will say that the songs on this album did stand out to me less than the songs on Blue. They still sound quite good. I still like R.E.M. But I've really discussed the elements that stood out to me. If anyone wants to discuss Man in the Moon in a lot more detail, like I can, because I'm very, very familiar with that song, and its contents. And I enjoyed basically all of it. But I don't really have much else to say about this album other than it's a solid album. You should check it out. The only, even though this is 92, this kind of slightly more polished version of their college rock, pre-grunge alt rock style is worth listening to. The guitar work is great. The lyrics continue to be odd, which is their strength. And that's really all I have to say, so I'll turn it over to Matthew.
I thought this was a really solid album. I would even say really good album. This was the first R.E.M. album that I listened to throughout, because R.E.M. wasn't really a band that I was particularly interested in, although that kind of speaks to more to my blind spot in terms of the around 90s rock that isn't like grunge, like Nirvana, Pink, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, etc., etc. But my favorite track of this album was starting to beat a dead horse, but Man on the Moon, which was really good. I liked Try Not to Breathe. The New Orleans instrumental #1, Sweetness Follows, Norland, Night Swimming, and Find the River. And probably the one track I didn't particularly care for is actually Everybody Hurts, which I think I've heard too much. But otherwise, I thought it was a pretty solid album.
Fan.
Okay, so I'm gonna go against the grain. At the beginning here, I said I've never been an R.E.M. fan, and we'll see if that changes. Well, that did not change. I am still very much not a fan of this sound, of this music. It's just never really done it for me. The only song of this album I'd heard before was Everybody Hurts. I'd never heard Man on the Moon. That's the only one I was familiar with. Um, so just, I mean, obviously R.E.M. is a very lyrics first, music second kind of band. I feel it's the message, the poetry is more important than anything else. I did like the New Orleans instrumental, Volume One. And I thought the intro and chorus to Ignoreland was the best piece of music on the whole record, and that's probably because it didn't really sound a lot like R.E.M. If I'm being honest. Because it was the least R.E.M. sounding thing on the record, so I was like, wow, this sounds really good. But then the verses and the pre-chorus I did not like. I don't know. I've never been a big mandolin guy. Definitely not an accordion guy. So those sounds just don't mesh with me. I'm not a big Michael Stipe guy. Never been a big fan of his voice. And just the overall sound, the production on it, I don't really like just the way they play. I just don't really like. There's just I don't know. It's just boring music to me. Uh, Not a lot to bite off of. It's just kind of boring soft rock with mandolin. This is maybe the most boring album we've done, in my opinion. This is certainly out of the big popular albums we've done. This is by far my least favorite. Because like Ringo the Fourth, that's obviously bad, and everybody knows that. With Red Box, that was obviously like not a known record. This one is like very famous, and out of all the famous ones we've done, this is at least one of the two that I just really did not like at all.
All right. Well, as for me, um, I'm thinking how to try to follow that up. I listened to this. I can't say I was too hugely filled with it. I did not dislike it to the extent of fan. I actually did like this album. I wasn't like head over heels for it. I will agree with Ben. The best song we've heard here was "Man on the Moon." That's a great one. I don't really care for "Everybody Hurts." It's kind of mid. I also found "Night Swimming" to be kind of stupid. But I like most of the other songs well enough, but they're kind of in one ear out of the other. The only one I really kind of liked, other than "Man on the Moon," which I was already really familiar with, was the Sidewinder Sleeps Tonight. Basically, Drive was okay, but basically everything else was just kind of forgettable. Like, I just couldn't really connect that much with it. I don't have a problem with really the production sound of the vocals. It's just the lyrics of most of them I found just kind of miss. Really, just in general, so it just wasn't a huge amount going on. I mean, I think it was okay. It was an okay album, but it didn't really blow me away. It suddenly seemed kind of like a one-trick pony. It has one great song on it, and it's got a bunch of what on most albums I guess I would call filler, but that wasn't really the intention here. It was intended to be killer, but it kind of ended up as filler. Anyone have anything else to say?
Yes, I will defend R.E.M. from this scandal. I was not expecting to have to do this. Obviously, I think this album was still quite good. This album was quite good. I thought that the kind of eccentric sound of R.E.M. shines through in this album with the good production, right, of John Paul Jones on instrumental arrangements on these songs. I'll agree that something like "Everybody Hurts" is kind of a corny song. It's kind of an odd song to be coming out of Michael Stipe's mouth. But Michael Stipe does seem like a genuinely good guy. I think that Bill eccentricity still shines through this album. I thought the guitar work was good. And of course, as even Chris conceded, "Man on the Moon" is still a really, really strong song. I'm a pretty big fan of R.E.M., not a massive one, but I think that they do deserve some more. They deserve some more respect for the work that they put into this album. Especially, I mean, '92 is a little bit late, right? Because never mind his drop. Other important albums have dropped. The Red Hot Chili Peppers are starting to become popular, etc. But in some ways, OEM is a band that is holding down the fort of kind of like experimentation in the late 80s. And really before that, too. At a time that, say, hair metal, this is not to say that there's not good hair metal songs, or that there's not advanced hair metal songs. I think that there are, in some cases. But the OEM was kind of keeping alive, and we've done other bands that were kind of in this category, like the Pixies, on here before, but kind of keeping alive this experimental spirit of rock. I mean, we could say a number of punk bands continue to do that as well, but like in this kind of like experimental side of things, keeping that kind of popular, at least in like colleges. I think the OEM did do an important work of that, and this is kind of a matured form of that. Now, of course, some people at the time were like, "Oh, they're selling out. Everybody holds it selling out." Not on this album, but people accused Shiny Happy People of selling out. No, they got popular because alternative rock was getting more popular, and yeah, they did get more polished. I'll agree with that. Shiny Happy People, but on the other hand, it's still ironic. Shiny Happy People is a very ironic song. I think OEM deserves respect. I think that they've done a lot of difficult work advancing music. Now, I'm not saying that thinking that this album is made is disrespecting them or whatever. I don't think it is. But I do think it is worth at least saying this. And I think that a lot of their work shines through in this album. I will agree that I had less to say about The Blue. Like something like Man on the Moon, right? It is a centric song about conspiracy theories about a dead comedian. But that's such a great song. Is proof of that, I think. So I will stand up for OEM and Michael Stipe.
I would also say that this album is better than what Chris and Fan were saying. I had low expectations going into this album, mostly because there was never a point where I was into REM. I've heard of REM. Like, of course, everyone heard him. It's the end of the world as we know it. Are almost like beaten down songs that everyone has heard of. But I thought this was altogether pretty solid work. I think it's better than a lot of albums that we have listened to. I wouldn't say it's in my top 30 favorite albums we've ever done in the album club, but I thought this was a solid book.
All right, anyone fan or anyone have anything else they want to say?
I mean, I'm not. One thing I do want to say is I'm not. When I said I don't like Michael Stipe, I'm not saying I don't like Michael Stipe the man. I'm sure he's fine. He's done a lot of activism and stuff. Yeah, I'm sure he's fine. I was directly referring to I don't like his singing voice. So I have nothing negative to say about the person. Just wanted to clarify that. I don't know. It's just like I don't know how much they really progress. How much they're really like kind of experimenting. I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, it's kind of like. I guess there is some level there to it, but I wouldn't say that they're holding down the fort for experimentation in the 80s, personally. But also, I guess the 80s were historically a very unexperimental time in music, at least in mainstream music and music that was played on the radio. So at the same time, I guess, for as far as artists that are mainstream, I guess there aren't really a lot who were doing it in the late 80s, just because that wasn't what was being played. By the 90s, there was obviously a lot more. So I guess to some extent, I can agree with that, but it is just worth noting that I think saying that they're really pushing it forward and big experimental is probably a bit of an overreach, in my opinion, at least. But I can respect where you're coming from. At the end of the day, I don't think I have nothing wrong with the band. I just don't like the music. I just think it's boring, and I don't think there's anything wrong with liking it or disliking it. I have nothing against the people.
Oh yeah, yeah. I do think it's fair. Michael Scott just has this like nasally voice. I could see why somebody wouldn't like that. That is understandable.
Alright. Are we ready to go on to say which album we like better?
Yep.
Alright. Now we're going on to which album each one of us liked better, and we'll start with you, Ben. Which album did you like better?
I like the album that tastes so better and so sweet. So I'm voting for Blue.
Matthew.
Blue.
Fan.
Blue.
And Chris, that's me. Am voting. I am voting for Blue. So I got a bit tongue twisted there. I am voting for Blue. So that is unanimous. And that's about it, really. I mean, I don't know if there's much left to be said. I think we've kind of given our thoughts. So we're going to move on to who picked what. Ben, you want to guess who picked what?
You want me to pick who guessed what?
No, I want you to guess who picked what, not to pick who guessed what.
So I think that fan picked the R.E.M. and the fan picked Blue. As you can tell, this is not a very serious prediction.
Yeah, I picked both, actually. No, I'm just kidding. I only picked the R.E.M. record. I really wanted to listen to them again. It was probably, I'm going to guess Ben picked R.E.M. and Blue. I'm going to say it's a double header for Ben. I don't know. I'm feeling that.
Alright, well, here's who actually picked what. Blue was picked by Ben, and Automatic for the People was picked by me.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Wait a second.
Go.
I also picked Blue.
Did you? Hold on. Let's see. I'm going back. It is... If you did pick Blue, it somehow did not make my list. My list shows it as only having been picked by Ben. Matthew, you may have picked it, but the one that it randomly selected, I guess, must have been Ben's, because I don't have yours, so...
Well, I also picked Blue.
I'll take your word for it. So, that's about it for another episode. Maybe not our finest moment, but at least Ben and Fan had something to say, and I guess Matthew too. I didn't really have much to say, but it's just, I don't know, these albums just didn't inspire much in me. So thank you all for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe. It really does help us out a lot. We do like listening to these albums, talking about them, so anything helps. Please have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.